Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Travis Thompson, and I'm going to be covering the technical portion of this course. So let's get started. We're going to be creating a microservice with Node.js, and we're going to be using Docker and Puppet to build it. So what we have up here is we're going to be using the Node Boron as our base image. We're going to be exposing port 3000 because that's what the microservice is running on. And then we do have an environmental variable. It's going to be production. We want to make sure that our Node instance starts up in production. Next up, what we have here is we are going to be making sure that we get Puppet installed and updating the packages on our instance. And then we actually go and we install Puppet. After Puppet's installed, what we want to do is we want to start copying some stuff over, and we're going to start this by making sure that we have a Hira directory already created on the instance. Hira is great because we're able to abstract our data out of our Puppet modules, and this is where more of kind of like your company information is going to be coming from. What I'll be using it for is mainly just configuring our Docker container here. R10K is basically a way for you to get your Puppet modules onto your instance. The first thing we want to do when we start copying stuff over, we want to make sure our site pp file gets copied on. Then we're going to copy over a Puppet file. Our Puppet file is basically going to define what modules we're going to be using. Also, we want to make sure that we specify where our Hira data is going to be at. So we want to make sure our Hira.yaml file is copied over. So we want to make sure we copy over a common JSON file. This is basically where we're defining all of our Hira data, and I'll get more into that later. Next, we want to run R10K and install our modules onto the instance. After that, we're going to run Puppet. We're going to be doing a Puppet apply. We want to make sure that we specify where the modules are located as well as the Hira file. Also, I'm just running it in verbose just for a little bit more information coming back from Puppet. And after that, we're going to go and we're going to be using var node hello world as our working directory. After that, we want to make sure that we install our Node modules, and we want to make sure that Node.js is the owner of that directory. After that, we're going to be setting our environmental variable. This is the one that we defined up at the top. But we have the option, this is going to be the default, and we have the option of overriding it when we actually build the Docker container. So let's talk about the Puppet file. The Puppet file is where you're going to be defining your modules. The main thing you need to understand here is that this name needs to match the name of the actual Puppet module. So if your module is called apt, you want to make sure that you define that as apt. All right, as I specified earlier, site pp, this is basically, we're going to be telling it where our class data is going to be coming from. Okay, now let's next take a look at our common JSON file. As you can see, this is where we're defining our class. It's going to be roles docker node.js. Also, the Hira data that we're setting, we are going to be using a deploy directory. This is where we want our Node.js application to go to. We're defining the repository of where we're pulling our code from. We're also telling it to use the master branch here. This is going to be the version of Node.js that we're going to be installing, which is going to be 6.9.4. And also, we want to make sure that we specify which groups we're going to be giving permissions to this directory. In this case, it's going to be Node.js, and we're going to be creating a user and group off this data. So let's take a look at the Hira YAML file. What we're doing here is we're going to specify that our backend is going to be JSON, and we're specifying within our hierarchy that the name of the file is called common. The other thing, too, we want to make sure that we specify the data dir. This is basically where Puppet is going to check to find our Hira file. So we're specifying it in etc Puppet Hira data. So now that we've covered what is in our Docker container repo, let's take a look at the Puppet modules that we have. We're going to start by taking a look at, okay, I got roles pulled up. So we'll talk about the roles first. Inside, as you can see, we're simply defining a class. And again, this has to match up with what we're specifying. Roles is the name of the module. Docker is this directory right here. And Node.js is the name of the file. Ultimately, the file name and the class name have to match up. And all we're doing is we're simply including our profile. Okay, let's take a look at our profile. You can see that our profile has a very similar structure. We have manifest Docker, Node.js. In this file, we've defined our class in a very similar fashion the way we did with our role. And except this time we have parameters that are coming in. And this is coming from our hybrid data right here. So we want to make sure that we have a group created. We want to make sure that we go and create our user. We are going to set some limits here. We want to make sure that this is all running under the Node.js user. And then we're going to be using the VCS repo to download our code, making sure that we're specifying Git because this is a Git repo. And again, our source is coming from Hira along with the revision, which is going to be your branch that you're using. And then we want to make sure that this comes after the user. So we're just putting in some dependencies here. So now that we've taken a look at what we're doing, let's actually get into the demo. Okay, so that completes this section, and I will see you in the next module.